And we're in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the hot seat, Adam Scully. Tuesday Night Mindset, Mental Health, and Mindfulness. How's it going, buddy?
Good, good. I'm actually thinking that brain needs to work on other things besides its bicep. There's a bit of a bump there.
Yeah, well, you know what? He's working out. Good on him for at least getting out of the house and doing something for himself. You know what? I mean, one step at a time, let's go. So I've known you now for 4 years, 5 years, something like that.
Yeah,
it seems like longer.
So, yeah.
No, it's got to be longer than that. I don't know, but it feels like forever. It does feel like a lot longer. And it's not because of you, it's because of me. I didn't have gray hair then. I would like to say you had hair, but I'd be lying.
No, I didn't have hair.
Yeah, but I rave. I'm a huge raving fan of Adam Scully. I'm really excited to have you on tonight. I blow up everybody about you, and I make sure that everyone knows, all my friends and everyone know about you. My wife says the same thing. Mel does too. So that's good. Now, I know your story. I've heard it a couple of times. Could you do us a favor? Give us the 2-minute elevator speech on Adam Scully. Give us your life in 2 minutes. Let's go. Let's hear it.
Okay, cool. So born on the Northern Beaches, moved out west when I was 7. Goal was to be a professional rugby league player. Got graded when I was 18, had a third of my right kneecap taken out when I was 19, so I'm a has-been that never was. Got married at 23, turned 24 on my honeymoon, worked in the computer-aided design industry for 20 years, and started a coaching business 4 years ago now, business coaching, after my eldest daughter was struggling with a HSC subject selection, and it made me realize that, wow, she's about to finish high school. And in the current job that I was in a different state every week. So I felt like a really crap dad. So I decided to follow my own advice and follow my dreams to become a coach. And the rest is history.
Yeah. And every time I hear it, one thing that I don't want to get into it too much because I'm going to ask a question in a little while that's gonna lead to a little bit more. But persistence is one thing that I always think of when I think of Adam Scully, and that's why it's been the title of this since I put it up, even when I put it into the wrong Facebook channel and on the as an event, and then realized that this morning that it was in the wrong group, but that's nonetheless we're in a learning experience. But Persistence for you. If nothing in your life else, if nothing else in your life, I'm sure persistence has taught you something. What are one or two things in your life that stood out that persistence has taught you a lesson on?
Oh, look, I think persistence comes down to a couple of things. The biggest one, self-discipline. So self-discipline and knowing what that end goal is. So it's like anything. Whenever you start something or you get start, well, look, we're on a, pretty much a health type environment, right, in this channel. So once everyone goes on that health journey, when you first start, you're all gung ho and everything else. And after a little while, you start to lag, right? And people start to peak and peter out. And often if you don't have that end goal and you don't enjoy the process, that's what's going to get you to stop. And I know that you had Max Garcia on here previously as well. And Max and I both have a very similar mentor who unfortunately died before we were both born, which is Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill was one of the very first people to start, in his book, Think and Grow Rich, which came out in the 1930s, around mindset and a positive mental attitude. And he also had another book called The 16 Master Keys to Success. And the last and most important key is self-discipline. And I think persistence comes down to self-discipline. And persistence is there in anybody that succeeded in anything, whether that's sport, business, life. And that comes down to doing the things that you don't feel like doing when you know you need to do them. And I think that sort of is where it all comes from.
And that that I think leads to perfectly into my next question. And Dan read my mind, and I promise I didn't tell him that I was going to ask this question, but it's kind of a blaring question. I mean, like you say, you were a has-been that never was, and you had this big dream, and to go on and play rugby league, and you may not have played rugby league, but you're pretty big in the OzTag world. But how did that change your life? Let's hear, like, how did you, you had this dream and like, boom, broken patella, man, that's serious business.
Yeah, I think that I was actually defending against Anthony Mundine in the game that I did it. And it's one of those things where when I had that injury, I'd lived out of home since I was 17, and my goal was to buy a house. And at that time, I realized that if I had one more serious injury, I'm gone. Like, I have nothing to fall back on from a career point of view. So I could have kept playing. Like, the injury wasn't career ending. It ended up being my decision to stop playing, because I realized that I could be there. But if I didn't get to that top, I'd be floundering around and nothing to fall back on. So I actually made the decision to stop playing. Sometimes I look back and could I have still played? I don't know. But I don't regret it, because everything I've done since has led me to where I am now.
Yeah, and you've done some amazing things, and I know more obviously than you said. Manager, director, business coach has just been the last thing. But I remember we've had conversations before about previous businesses that you've been in, and kind of dodged the bullet and got out and just in time before the toilet finally flushed for the last time. But it's what is that, your persistence in as a salesperson, as a sales manager, all these things, what is that taught you in your life?
Look, I think the greatest thing that I've learned is probably a lesson that everybody gets taught, which is the golden rule, which is to treat others the way you want to be treated. So whether that goes with when you're selling something to a client, or whether you're dealing with your staff, you treat them the way you want to be treated. And if you do that, you really can't go wrong. Now, I pride myself on having high ethics and high morals, so I think that helps, and integrity. And unfortunately, I tell it how it is sometimes, which can either rub people the wrong way or get them on side. But at least you know what you stand typically. But for me, I think it just comes down to being confident in what you do. If you love what you do, it's something that I used to tell a lot of my staff. And I remember one particular story. I I was in a very male-dominated industry, in the CAD industry, and I'd always wanted to have a female salesperson. And I ended up getting this one girl in through a recruitment agency, and they guarantee them for 3 months. So if they leave within 3 months, they'll replace that person. And it was coming up to just into the third month, so 2 weeks, 2 months, 1 week in, and I just noticed that she didn't have that same enthusiasm when she was coming to work. So I pulled her aside after our sales meeting on a Friday, and I said, look, I just want to let you know how fantastic a job you're doing. And if you decide to stay in this, I think you're going to do really, really well. But I'm noticing that you don't have the same enthusiasm when you come in. Now, if you're getting up in the morning thinking you don't want to come to work, I don't want you to be here. I want you to come to work because you like it, you enjoy it, you're going to do well. And I explained to her that it cost me $11,000 to get her there through the recruitment agency. And if she leaves after 3 months, I don't get a replacement, and I've just blown 11 grand. But if you make the decision that you want to leave, and it's going to be yours, because I think that if you decide to stay, you'll be really successful. But you don't have to tell me now. Have a think about it over the weekend and let me know. Now, so she had to think about it on the weekend, then she left. She decided to leave. But I'm still connected to that person now. And, that was 2007. So I'm still in contact with that person. But it was around that same thing. If you wake up in the morning and you dread going to work, you need to change. You need to wake up and love what you do. You're going to be enthusiastic about it. You're not going to be exhausted at the end of the day. And if you can grow it in that passion, and that's something that I guess from a sales perspective, sales management, or even a manager or a leader, is you need to be authentic, because people have a really good BS radar, right? So if you're saying one thing, but your body language is saying another, people can really tell. And, I truly cared about the staff that I had working for me, and I wanted them to do well, and I wanted to empower them with whatever knowledge I could for them to do that. And same with my clients, I'd go into bat for them against our vendor to make sure they got the right deals, because I still wanted them to be a client of mine in 5 years' time, not just so I could get that month's commission check.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been impressed. And one thing that you've always said to me is, be in a place that you feel valued, and you've questioned me in that space, a couple of times. And I've always said, to you, you're right. Okay. But I've also said a couple of times that I've wanted to punch you unconscious.
I've actually heard that from somebody else as well.
Actually, I think what I said was, as I said it to somebody else about wanting to do to you. And Mel was very worried. My mom was very worried that it was going to come back to you, so I had to fess up pretty quickly. But it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, because you challenge me, and you challenge me at a level. You've always challenged me at a level that has taken me to the next level, to really challenge my thinking, so I know that I'm doing and thinking the right thing. But how do you know as a coach, because you're talking to other people that are coaches here as well, that help people in their life experience and their fitness journey. How do you know how to push someone just enough? I mean, you coach teams as well. How do you not only business coach, but you coach your kids' teams too? How do you know to push someone just enough, but not push them over the edge to where they disappear into the other regions?
There's a whole lot of ways to learn around that. And as you know, I'm a certified DISC practitioner, which is around personality profiling and that sort of thing as well. So understanding that person's personality profile can make a big difference. So you get to know what sort of drives them and what motivates them. So you can then start to identify how far you can push them. I think it also comes with experience and confidence. And it comes down to the trust factor or trust level that person has in you. If I hadn't built any trust with you, there's no way I would be able to push you knowing that you would actually react in a way that's going to push you into action. You would just tell me where to go and take off, right? You wouldn't come back. Whereas once I've built that level of trust, then you actually have that ability to be able to push someone further. And I think it's like everything, I was taught many, many years ago by my dad, you have to, give trust or give respect to actually get it back. And I think it comes down to that same level. And from a coaching point of view, I'm very conscious of making sure I don't tell you to do something that I don't do myself. So
lead by example.
Yeah. So for an example was in my son's football team, they were 15 last year. There was no swearing in our football team. Now I know all those kids swear, but when they come on my football field, that wasn't accepted. Now I didn't swear at them, and I told them, I'm not going to swear at you, and you need to show me the same respect and not do that. So whenever a new player came to the team, I'd say to the boys, have you told them the rules? Because then it became their culture that they were building. Now, obviously, I policed that to make sure that happened, but I was the same as them. I didn't swear at them, and I always remained calm. I didn't lose it.
And I remember you told me a story about that, and how, if I remember correctly, like somebody else, there was, I can't remember, was it a meeting or something, lost their cool and you called them out on it. So yeah, it's absolutely, this is Sandra Bartlett. Sandy, you need to sign in to StreamYard so we can get your beautiful little face below this picture here. But that's Sandy Bartlett's put up that post. She's got a couple of good comments. Three more questions. I want to be very cognizant of time, but three more questions really that I have. You talked about disc profile, and for people that don't know and haven't heard of what a disc profile, I shockingly scored as an I personality, shock and horror, which is someone that likes to talk. You wouldn't believe it. But and I'm sure that Daniel Simone probably would have scored in a very similar location on it.
I'm still waiting for him to get back to me about that. So.
Well, you know what? He's lost, and being seen by Daniel Simone is an honor and a privilege because he is a busy, busy man. Anyways, moving on. Could you just give us yup. Could you just give us a brief rundown on what disc is? I know it's difficult to, I've heard this, so many times and done it enough times that what does disc stand for? What is it about?
So I'll give you a really brief overview. So disc is basically breaking it down into 4 particular personality profiles. Now, nobody is 100% one. You're a mixture of all, and there's no right or wrong here. It's just the way it is. And it comes down to basically self-awareness and knowing what potentially your limitations or your positives are there. So you've got D stands for dominance, I is for influence, S is for stability, and C is conscientiousness. So if I broke the top 2, D and I, up, they're typically faster pace and more extroverted, and S's and C's typically slower paced and more introverted. Now you've got D's and C's are more task oriented, so they're more worried about getting a task done, where I's and S's are more people orientated. So what I typically try to do is I'll mix it up and I'll actually use birds to describe them instead, because people can't remember the numbers, right, or the letters. So a D is an eagle, okay, an I is a parrot, an S is a dove, and a C is an owl. Okay, so what you'll often get is they all speak their own language. So just say, for example, we've got an eagle and we've got, a dove here. They're actually speaking in different languages. So the eagle might be speaking Japanese and the dove speaks French, right? And so there's no communication. Now, once you can start to identify someone's disc profile, you can actually adapt to then communicate and connect with them better. So from a coach's point of view, or even in a sales scenario, if you can identify what your prospect is or what your client is, you can then adapt to their level to communicate at that. So that's one of the most valuable things around disc. Once you start getting into the psychology and certain behaviors and everything else, it's super interesting.
I that is the perfect way. And I remember when the first time I heard you give that analogy of, of different birds, it was funny. I thought to myself, yep, I'm a parrot. I talk a lot. Yeah. Okay. I totally understand that. That's fine. Um, but and it made it very easy for me to then pick out that type of personality in other people, and knowing myself and kind of some generalities about each of the profiles, how I could actually have some conversation with them and make it meaningful, rather than, me talking at them like I'm very good at doing, as everyone knows.
Same here. And I think that's one of the things that why I try to preface it to start with. There's no right or wrong. It's just the way it is. And I remember the very first time that I went through DISC with you when you were part of another team, and one of those particular members ended up being a really high C, and he actually almost took offense, right?
Yeah, I remember this. I remember this exact person.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. Once you can identify it, okay, that makes sense why I behave that way. If you're in a sales situation, you're in someone which is a high D or is an eagle, they're just all about problem solving, fixing it, and moving on. They're going to be really direct. They're just action orientated, right? They're going to swoop in, take what they want, and move on. And they're not into detail. So when you start to understand that, you can start to pigeonhole, that guy I used to work with, that's what he was like. Or, if it's an owl, they're going to ask you a million questions before they even make a decision, right? Because they have to dot every I and cross every T. Once you start to understand that, you can give them more information up front to shorten that cycle time.
Yeah. And funny story, I don't know if you know, that individual is no longer with that company either anymore. But I believe that that D personality and more of a DI personality was very valued in that particular team. But let's not get too much into that, because the next question is your story about following your dreams and going from where you were up to a business coach, or across, or however you want to say it, was a follow your dreams, lead by example moment. And I remember you saying, like, it was, I can't remember exactly the story. Well, basically, like, your daughter basically challenged you, say, how could you're pretty much a hypocrite, Dad. You are not living by what you want me to be.
That was all me. So the actual story was, I was driving my eldest daughter when she was 15 to dancing, and she just seemed a bit off. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I've got to do my HSC subject selection. I don't know what I want to be. And I'm like, Geordie, you're 15. You haven't enough life experience yet to know. At the time, I was 42. And I'm like, look, I'm 42. I still don't know what I want to be. And she was like, great help, Dad. And I'm like, no, I'm just being serious. I said, look, you want to go to uni, right? She goes, yeah. I said, okay, so you've got 2 more years of school, minimum 3 years of uni. That's 5 years until you end up with a full-time job. The job you end up with may not exist today, so don't stress. And I'm like, what do you enjoy doing? Follow that, because then it's not like work. And then I said to her, because I always tell the kids they can be anything they want to be, follow their dreams, follow their goals. And as I'm doing this and I'm saying these words in my head, I'm like, you're the biggest hypocrite on earth, because I'd been thinking about becoming a coach for 3 or 4 years and I hadn't done anything about it. But the most important thing was, as I said before, I was in a different state every week with my previous job. And when that dawned on me, I felt like a really crap dad, because I wasn't here. And I thought I've missed out on so many things in her life, but I can make up for that in the final 2 years of her schooling. And I remember I went to, I think it was a champ assembly at her school. And so I rocked up because I told her I was going to be there. And I think it was more for me that I went to every event, not for her. But she got up, walked across stage, and you could see her go like this when she sees my bald head in the audience. And she comes up and she goes, what did you come to this for? This is a nothing thing. I'm like, no, I told you I wasn't going to miss anything. And, I've got to say, the most valuable thing that I've got out of becoming a coach, obviously I have a higher level of fulfillment in what I do now. But it's actually the relationship I've been able to build with my 3 teenage kids, because I'm now here.
I totally value where you're coming from, and with that the moment that you said, like, you're in the crowd, watching everything that your kids do, and you said, being at every event, I think that's extremely important, and a conversation that I had with you previous to the when in the previous team that I was in, and knowing that I would never have that freedom in the previous position, and you helped me to see, the next, a good position that I should go in, and I am there, and I'm very thankful for that, for your guidance into that. And I always pick your brain every time. Well, not every time, but I often have a heap of books that are on my book list, and I always say, if you haven't read it, talk to Adam Scully, because he's probably read it. And I've told Simone this several times, and I have a list of about 25 books that my goal is to get through this year, and I've gotten through 8, so I'm well on my way.
You got some catching up to do.
Yeah, I got some reading to get done. I'm hoping, and I would like to say that the long books are the ones that I've read, but I'd again be lying. So not helpful. But anyways, what are now Dan's done his thing on the top 10 books or 12 books that they've changed his life. Okay. And I've said several times, the ones that, are doing in my book, and in the Simon Sinek book, Leaders Eat Last, I find as an amazing book. That read quite a few of them. But what are your top 5 books, you'd say?
Wow.
I know. If you want to go to 10, that's fine. But I mean,
So when people ask me this, I've typically sent them a list of about 35.
Well, let's try to cut that by 7%. 7 times.
But I know when Daniel asked that recently, I commented, goes, which book changed your life? And I had to say Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, because I was 39. My business had been bought out. I think I was in my 6th job in 6 years, or 4th job in about 4 years, and I felt like I was working for idiots, and I'd lost my mojo. I'd lost that optimism and positivity that I've always had. And so I downloaded a book called 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. And then part of that they mentioned, once I read that book, that started my personal development journey from there. So has to be Think and Grow Rich, has to be in that top list. I think you hit the nail on the head with Simon Sinek. So he's got a couple, but obviously Start With Why is a big one as well.
Yep. I read that one. I think 2 years ago, because I think you pointed me in that direction as well. Another great book. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I'm known as the why guy in some circles, because I challenge people about why they do what they do. Flask is a fantastic book. I think that Simon Sinek, his mindset around servant leadership is something that I definitely gel with. What other ones have we got? Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Read that one. Legendary book.
Right. So everyone focuses on the goal instead of the little habits that are going to get you
1%.
There, right? So you enjoy the journey. So that's a fantastic book. What else have we got? Actually, there's one called The Challenge. For people that are in sales, the Challenger Sale.
Yep.
Which sort of leads on from
I'm taking that course in October.
Yeah, and it's around getting your client or prospect to think differently. So you challenge their thought process. So what you said before was, I've challenged you a lot, right? So I get you to think differently than what you did before. And so that played a big part in my life. Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith is another fantastic one. So identifying, different triggers that make you behave a certain way and how to control that. So your instance of talking too much has a thing called weight, which is why am I talking? I actually have that on my screen here because I tend to do that a lot as well. What was
it? Toast. The toast? Something you had an acronym that you gave me one time about talking too much.
It might have been weight. I think it might have been weight. I might have said toast wrong. I can't remember. There's been so many.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some others that are like fantastic books that I really, really enjoyed. Look, some story-wise, the one on it's American. I'm trying to remember the word, but it's around Alan Mullally when he saved Ford Motor Company. Reading that story is just like crazy. Like they were like the way they were chasing money to try to stay afloat was crazy, and then they ended up doing it without government assistance. Also, Shoe Dog, the story around Nike.
Yep.
You know, the way that they struggled for cash flow, they were growing 50% year on year, but for 20 years they were like chasing their tail to pay their bills and everything else, right? So it's amazing to see these massive organizations and they actually face the same problems that small businesses do.
Yeah. That was actually, I think I listened to that book, and it was one. It now that reminds me, it's one that I should probably go back and listen to again.
And last one that just popped into my head, which is a fantastic book, is a book by Brene Brown called Dare to Lead. And that's
on my list.
Yeah, so that's all around vulnerability and building trust with your team and how you do that. So, you know, we're taught since we're like knee high that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, when it actually takes a lot of strength to actually be vulnerable in a situation. And as soon as someone's vulnerable, you typically connect and you build trust. So there's a handful off the top of my head.
And amazing books. You used the term last question, because I'm very cognizant of time because I could talk to you all day, and we often do talk for a lot longer than we should when we get together. But anyway, last one, you used the term mojo. You lost your mojo, and a very a friend of mine and an amazing individual, Gary Birtwistle, runs the Mojo radio show. I've talked about it before. Gary is a legend, and I've been very lucky to hear him speak a couple of times, listen to him on the Mojo radio show. He has the Mojo daily journal that I use. On my third one now, that I write every day. No Daniel Simone, I'm not going to even put that up, what you just said there. But he used the term mojo, and that's something that he talks about all the time is, what do leaders have as mojo? Okay. And how do you know if you have the mojo, or how do you get mojo? What would I'm not gonna ask you a too difficult question to end it off, because I don't want to blow everyone's mind, but what is around that term mojo? Could you work on that? Do you think work on your own personal mojo?
I actually think that that's more intrinsic, so it has to come internally. And for me, and I think that the whole COVID and coronavirus has sort of cemented, I think that I commented on Daniel's post the other week as well, what's it taught us that, I'm an eternal optimist. And this has just brought that to light even more than it was before. And that was how I knew that I'd lost that mojo, because I wasn't that, I think that, I get pleasure out of having a positive impact on people's lives. And when I didn't feel like I was able to provide that, that was when I felt like I had lost my mojo. And because I wasn't that positive person, or I wasn't that one that was, influencing. And, like we were talking before, I'm a high I, so that's what I do. I like to inspire and influence people. And for me, I think mojo has to be an intrinsic thing, that something that's going to motivate you and instill in you, that's going to give you that fulfillment and drive to continue going.
Yeah. And it's something that I think I talk to people about all the time is and there was a book I read, actually I pulled it off the shelf the other day. It's and the title of it is how to inspire the people who are not motivated. Okay. And it's about, it was given to me when I started teaching very urban inner city kids outside of New York City when I was young. And it basically the book starts off, you cannot motivate someone who is not motivated. You can inspire them to become motivated,
Yeah.
But you can't just motivate someone. Motivation and mojo is an internal thing. So you can inspire someone, but you can't actually give them the mojo. You can't give them motivation.
Yeah, look,
So,
and it's got to be something that, and I love that, what you just said then, you can inspire someone to do it, but you can't motivate them. And I think that the way that you do that is by leading by example.
mm-hmm.
So, challenges and that sort of stuff. One way that you can do that, last year, you're probably aware, I did challenge myself no alcohol for 12 months, right?
I'm doing that now. Thanks to you, I'm doing that now.
Well, so many people would say to me, "Oh God, what's wrong with you? I'd never be able to do that." And I'm like, "So you've given up before you've even tried." Right.
Yeah,
So,
I've heard that once a week.
And, one of the things that I learned was it's like a muscle, right? The more you work on it and say no, the stronger you become.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually ended up being quite funny to actually see the response from people when you do it. And I remember I was at Australian titles for OzTag and we got beaten in the semi-final, but I was waiting for my flight to come back from Coffs Harbour. So we were watching one of our other teams in their final. And one of the guys said, "I'm going to the bar. What do you want?" I said, "I just want a water." And he goes, "I'm going to the bar. I'm not going to buy you a water." I'm like, "I just want a water." "Well, what are you drinking?" I said, "I'm not drinking." He goes, "Ah," and he storms off, right? And the guy I was sitting next to, he goes, "Good on you." He goes, "Isn't it bad how we're actually you're seen as an outsider if you're not willing to drink or you're not drinking?"
Yeah.
I used to joke with people, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I said to my son, "Oh, maybe I should just use that as the icebreaker." And he goes, "No, you can't tell them that, Dad. It's not true." I'm like, "No, it's just ice, because you say that, they're going to feel guilty about asking you to have a drink."
Yeah, that'll shut them up. They won't be trying to push you.
And that comes down to that self-disciplining thing again, right? So I think that everything sort of comes back to that self-discipline, but you have to have that internal drive that's going to motivate you to do those things to get that result. And if you haven't got that, or you haven't been inspired by someone to get that motivation, and a couple of years ago, my daughter had to watch a documentary for school. And so she goes, "Oh, Dad, can you watch it with me?" And it was in regards to, I think it focused on 5 kids that lived in Claymore. And it was around the Housing Commission. And I was getting angrier and angrier as I was watching this show. Because, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it now, is none of these kids had anyone that was inspiring them that they could be more than what they thought they were born into. And, that's the thing that frustrated me, is that, I think there was only one girl who was like 8 years old, and she said that she wanted to become a teacher when she was older because her school teacher had just come back from Disneyland. And I said, well, at least she's looking up to someone that's actually worked to get ahead, to be able to go and travel, instead of, there was 14-year-old girls who were talking about getting pregnant so they could get the baby bonus and then get the single mother pension. And I'm like, oh my God, where are the parents telling them, no, there's more to life. You can be more than this. And it just frustrated me because there was no one there to inspire them to get better.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's a big thing. I can get on my high horse when it comes to that. But it's the same as coaching in sport, right? With those rules that I would bring into the team. And I was quite strict. And I said to the boys last year, my other favorite saying is control the controllables. You can't control how someone else is going to react or respond, but you're in complete control over how you react and respond. But if your response is based on what they're doing, they're still controlling you. So it's being conscious, because you can't make a rational decision when you're emotional. So it's trying to teach those boys at a younger age to identify that. And I said to the boys, why do you think I coach you the way I do? And they go, "Oh, it's just because you're strict." And I said, "No, it's not." I said, "Why do you think I have it that there's no swearing in the team?" And they go, "I don't know." I said, "Because I want you to hold yourself to a higher standard than everybody else." Now, why doesn't everybody else do it? Because it's not easy. But I want you to see that you can be more than what you think you are, or what you think you can become. And I told them, I said, there's a couple of selfish ways that I coach you this way. Is A, I want to have a positive impact on every single one of their lives. But also, when they get to my age and someone says, "Who's the best coach you ever had?" I actually want it to be me. So there's a couple of kids, obviously, that I didn't have that impact on, but that was my intention. I can't control how it's taken on the other side, but that was always my intention. And, I have no doubt there's many of those kids that actually tried to go against the learnings that I was giving them, that as they get older, they're going, you know what, Adam was right.
Yep. I've told you the story about my high school coach, my high school hockey coach, and he was extremely strict. And there were things that went unsaid until they were broken. I mean, like, everyone knew this was the rule until someone tried to press it, and then when it got pressed, it was like boom, extreme, and then that was it. But and I highly respect him for everything he's done. They named the high school hockey tournament after him. He's the winning most coach in Connecticut high school hockey history. He's an amazing guy. I won a national championship with him in 1995 for juniors before I went. Graduated from, went to high school, won a world championship, national champion, then a world championship in Quebec. He's absolutely amazing individual. Moved to America when he was a teenager by himself at 18 years old with $25 in his pocket. And he owns 3 hockey rinks now in America. And so now he's retired, but.
It's interesting though, right? Because some of the things that you were telling me about him, it was almost like he had a bit of a closed mindset. He wasn't taking on new ideas. No, it was my way or the highway, right? And you guys were too scared to actually go against him. And I remember when my son moved to the football club that he was with, and I ended up getting told, like, on the Wednesday that we were going to have the team, and I had one coaching session before we played our first game. And so that was on the Friday. I'd printed out the kickoff positions of where I wanted them to stand. But when we got to the field, we weren't allowed in the dressing shed. So the kids had to get changed just on the grass on the side of the field. And it just threw my pre-game plan out the window. And the other team kicked off, and the ball went dead. And at first I'm like, damn, it's my fault because I didn't actually tell the kids. So when they came in at halftime, I apologized to them. I said, look, that was my fault because I didn't actually tell you where to stand. And you should have seen the stunned look on their face. It was all like they'd never heard an adult say that they were wrong before, or that they'd made a mistake. Yeah. So I think that's another way to build that authenticity and build that trust that, I don't know everything. I think I'm pretty good, and I'm not going to tell you to do something unless I'm pretty confident that it's going to work. But I'm always learning as well. That's why I read so much, to pick up new ideas and everything else. There's so many things that I don't know, but there's a lot of useful or useless information in my head that I'm willing to share.
That is absolutely true, and I love talking to you. Okay, and we could do this. There's few people that I have on here at the show, and on Tuesday night that I could talk to and do talk to way over time. Being very aware that I'm over time right now, looking at the ticker over my head. We're at 43 minutes, and I said I'd be done in 30 minutes, and I'm already 13 minutes over, and I promised myself every week that I wouldn't do it. My goal will be that one time I will do it. But I'm going to ask you to come on another time because it's absolutely amazing to talk to you. You have a lot of knowledge to give, okay? I'm going to challenge some of my coaches to talk to you as well. And do what they're doing, as well as I had Sandy Bartlett do the same thing. You guys do a lot of parallel stuff in different ways. So you guys are both amazing. We love to have the fact that you're now part of our extended network.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? There's so many coaches, and a lot of people see it as, you can't talk to them because they're competition, where it's actually a load of bull, right? If we're both doing a good job, it's good for both of us.
Yeah.
Right? And, there's certain things that I can learn from Sandy all the time, like with her professional speaking and everything else. She's got so much knowledge to share, and Max as well,
Yep.
Those sort of guys. It's quite funny when people see me talking to other business coaches and they're going, I didn't think you guys would get on. I'm like, why? There's way more the people here than I could ever service and look after.
Mm-hmm.
So
we talk about that. We talk about this all the time. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
It's an abundance mindset.
Yeah,
an abundance mindset.
And I think that's the the big thing you talking about before around leaders and maybe mojo and that sort of stuff. And I think that a growth or abundance mindset has to be part of it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I don't want to get too far. I won't hit the 45-minute mark. I promise. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 minutes, 3 seconds. I'm going to let it go. Adam Scully, thank you so much for coming on. That's 45 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We're done for the night. We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Adam.
See you, mate.